In my conversations with meeting and event planners, I often hear that one of the biggest problems they face, or one of the things that keeps them up at night, is how do I make sure people make meaningful connections? That I put in all this time and money and energy to get the right venue, the right food, the right AV, the right graphics and elements, the right screens, the right chairs for people to sit in. I set up everything. And if people don't make meaningful connections that build their personal and professional lives, they don't keep coming back to the events. They don't tell their friends about it. But on the flip side, if people go to an event and they make meaningful connections, they have a great time with deep connections that actually last beyond the event and have things that turn into business. Now, that is an event that people will tell other people about. They will bring their friends. They will make sure they go every year. They will carve time out of their calendar in order to do it. But one of the biggest problems that these planners face is how do we get people to network? Most people have a bad taste in their mouth. They literally cringe when they hear the word networking to begin with. So how do you do so in a way that's authentic and genuine and real? And even highly experienced meeting and event planners will find themselves getting caught up with old school tactics, or the types of activities that we've seen over and over again. And the biggest thing is, this is really not their fault for not seeing or not knowing alternatives. Many people think, hey, networking is awkward, you just got to bite the bullet, you just got to get through it. Or people go, hey, networking is just awkward, right? Introverts are more reserved, extroverts talk a little too much, it's just what it is, and eventually they'll get down to what they need to. But the reality is, it is the kind of good news is that it is not a people problem, the networking issue. It's actually a design problem. And when it's a design problem, by bringing in the right structure and the right people, you can make sure that your events thrive and people have an unbelievable experience, unlike anything they've had at maybe any other networking event before. And here's one of the most interesting things: when you understand that it is a design problem, and then you look at the sequencing of the activities you take them through, that can be the biggest game changer, because many networking events are missing a first step that I'll tell you about in just a second, but others sequence them in the wrong order so they don't have the maximum impact. So looking at your audience and the people that you're working with, if you design effectively for them to set introverts and extroverts up to succeed, and you help them build meaningful connection beyond just a job title or where they're from, your event will stand out head and shoulders above most networking events. In my years of teaching networking and working with audiences around the world, I found that there's really three primary levels of networking. So the first is surface, the second is personal, and the third is meaning. So surface, personal, and meaning. Surface is just an exchange of facts. This is how long you've been doing something, your job title, and where you live. These are the most superficial things that people typically stick to and focus in networking, and they wonder why they're not actually getting deeper. And there's a reason for that. Many people wonder why they don't connect more deeply in networking, and they don't even see what is the problem. And in years of working with clients around the world, teaching communication and networking, I've learned that there's kind of three levels when it comes to networking that you can get into. And most people stay in level one and they wonder why they're struggling. And for the event planners designing the events, they wonder why people aren't going deeper. So those levels are this. The first is surface. The second is personal. The third is meaning. So level one is surface. This is exchange of facts. This is how long you've been doing your job, what your job is, where you live, very, very basic, superficial details. Most people lean on this the most heavily. They spend all their time talking about this at networking events. They build their elevator pitch around it, and it's basically just a statement of fact. And they wonder why they're not getting deeper. Now, the interesting thing about human beings is we are not logically driven. We're emotional beings that justify our emotions with logic. And when you understand that, you realize that human beings need emotional shifts to do uncomfortable things, right? We approach somebody new, to connect with somebody. And when we have emotional shifts, we are more engaged, we retain more information, and we take more action. This is why when someone has wanted to make a change for a long time, it's not until they have a significant emotional shift that they finally get the results after years of not getting the results. And how do we do this? Well, we move into the personal level. Level two, this is where we engage stories. Stories are how we not only bring up emotional content from our lives, but we help people bring it up in theirs. Once we get into people's stories and we understand the stories they tell themselves and they tell the world, we can more effectively connect. But then there's one level deeper than that we need to get into, and that's meaning. Meaning is when we get into a person's values and goals. This is what we understand. What is most important to them? What are they working towards? How can we positively contribute to their lives by helping them have more of these experiences, make new connections, go see new things? There's so much we can offer, but we can't offer that until we understand what they need, want, like, and desire. So in order to do this, we need to be able to get to meeting without going straight to it aggressively, because most networking tends to go to the extremes. They'll go on the very, very high level. What do you do? How long have you been doing it? Introduce yourself. Or they go way too deep, which is saying, what are your deepest values? What are the things that matter the most to you in the world? Both of these can be useful and they can give you information. What is far better is to get people into telling and sharing stories about what's meaningful for them. Then you can glean those things from the stories they tell. You will learn far more about a person from them telling a story about their life than you will from them listing the bullet points of their resume. So as meeting and event planners, as speakers, our job is to design and structure the event and the sessions within the event so we encourage positive storytelling that helps people build meaningful connections. And what I found fascinating in my years of doing this work is it's not actually getting people to talk and tell stories or the prompt that typically stops people. The issue is sequencing. What I mentioned before is that there is a step before the activity, before the prompt, before the icebreaker activity that you need to complete to set everyone up in the room to succeed. That includes your extroverts and introverts. You help set and pre-frame the scenario so that people have an optimal chance of getting the best possible results. Now, in order to do that, what is that first step? What is the first problem we need to address once we have people at a networking event? It is not how do you initiate the conversation. It's not your opening line. It's not your one-liner. It's none of those things. And there's a reason that most people feel inauthentic, they feel cringy, they feel fake, or they avoid it entirely because they don't want to feel those things. They don't even start new conversations because the problem before that, it is not your opening line. It is dealing with the fear of the approach. Most people are so afraid to approach, or they're so nervous when they do, they overthink, they get in their head, they blow it up. It's this whole big thing. It is fear of rejection. It is fear of being on your own. What if nobody talks to me? All of this comes up. So in our design, in our setup, in the way that we build our sessions and our events, if we don't first address this straight out the gate, then we risk the entire event being less impactful than it would have otherwise been. My speaking mentor was a guy named Sean Stevenson. You can see him right here behind me. And he said, as a speaker, as a planner, as an event organizer, your first mission at the very, very beginning is to unify the room as quickly as possible. If you can bring everybody together straight out the gate, now we go from a room full of strangers that are disconnected and wondering, oh no, how's that awkward networking going to be, to, hey, we're together, we're in this. They're willing to go further, faster, deeper with you. They want to engage more because they're having a different experience at this event than they have ever had at an event like this before, maybe, or it's the best one that they have had. And now they want to invest. They want to become part of the group. They want to bring other people. And that word of mouth is invaluable for growing your business, for growing your groups, your events, your sessions, and more. And you might be asking yourself, well, how important is that word of mouth versus the other forms of advertising that I do? Well, there was an Ogilvy study that was done, and this is pre-AI, so just keep that in mind. But they looked at the top 10 points of influence for consumers making buying decisions. So people that actually took an action, bought the thing, signed up, joined the course, etc. And they said, what were the things that were most influential in driving them towards those changes? They looked at the impact of YouTube, of newspapers and magazines, of search engines like Google or Bing or Yahoo. They looked at social media. They looked at Facebook. They looked at TV. They looked at all these different elements. And one of the things I found most fascinating was that the highest ranking one out of all the points of influence, number one was word of mouth. Now, that's interesting. Okay, that's cute, but then I learned, okay, 74% of people said they trust a recommendation and or will make a buying decision off a word of mouth recommendation. That's more interesting. What I found most interesting, guess where search ranked out of 10? So number one was word of mouth. We had all these other options. Guess where search ranked? 10 out of 10. It was the lowest out of all of these factors and different types that they were looking at, it had the least impact in driving buying decisions. What that means is you can pay for ads, you can pay for SEO to get your website at the top of Google, you can do all of that, and a word of mouth recommendation can beat out all of that, even from someone you don't know. That's the even more compelling part. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person you know well and trust. It can be a stranger that makes a word of mouth recommendation, because we tend to trust recommendations from human beings more than paid ads and videos and social media. So that word of mouth is critical for growing your event and keeping people coming back for more. Now that we've covered that the networking problems that most events face are not a people problem, it's actually a design problem. And we understand that it is the sequencing of the events that we take people through, the actions we take people through, that will drive the results. And we also now know that the number one thing we need to address at the very beginning of our event is to address the fear of the approach, the fear of initiating a new conversation. Well, now the next step is, what are some great ways to do that? And in our next video, I'll be talking through some examples of ways that you can help your audience deal with the approach anxiety. You can unify the room quickly, and now they're ready to go deeper, further, faster together. So click either here or somewhere on this screen. There will be a prompt for the next video, and I'll see you there to talk through some strategies on how you can start to connect your rooms better than ever today.